अगर हिंदी भाषा में समझ नहीं आता सीधी भाषा में, प्लीज स्विच ऑफ योर मोबाइल्स। एंड सेकेंड थिंग, 9 बजे हम श्रवण करेंगे हिज होलीनेस गोपाल कृष्ण गोस्वामी गुरु महाराज। और जो भक्त हिंदी में प्रवचन सुनना चाहते हैं या अनुवाद सुनना चाहते हैं, आपके लिए सुविधा है पीछे। इसलिए तुष्ट गौरांग प्रभु अनुवाद कर रहे हैं, परिक्रमा मार्ग में जाएंगे तो उनको हिंदी अनुवाद की सुविधा प्राप्त होगी। हरे कृष्ण।
ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायण नमस्कृत्य देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये। नस्तप्रायेषु पात्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। Hare Krishna. So thank you for this opportunity to purify myself and to expose my own ignorance. But I will try to repeat what has been spoken by our Buddhist acharyas, so that we can have a nice discussion today. Beg the blessings of all the assembled Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis, so that we can have a nice conversation today. So today we'll be reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 15, text number 8. The title of the chapter is Narada and Angira instruct King Chitraketu. Text 8 again. Dehadi vibhagyo yam avivekakata pura jati vyakta vibhago yam yatha vastu nikalpitaha deha dehi vibhago yam avivekakata pura jati vyakta vibhago yam yatha vastu nikalpitaha deha dehi vibhago yam avivekakata pura jati vyakti vibhago yam yatha vastu nikalpitaha
Avivedakata pura
Deha, of the body, Dehi, and the proprietor of the body, Vibhaga, the division, Ayam, this, Aviveka, from ignorance, Krita, made, Pura, from time immemorial, Jati, of the class or caste, Vyakti, and the individual, Vibhaga, division, Ayam, this, Yata, just as, Vastuli, in the original object, Kalpita, imagined. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki. Divisions and generalization and specifications, such as nationality and individuality, are the imaginations of persons who are not advanced in knowledge. Please repeat. Divisions and generalization and specifications, such as nationality and individuality, are the imaginations of persons who are not advanced in knowledge. Purport. Actually, there are two energies, material and spiritual. Both of them are ever existing because they are emanations from the eternal truth, the Supreme Lord. Because the individual soul, the individual living entity, has desired to act in forgetfulness of his original identity since time immemorial, he is accepting the different positions in material bodies and being designated according to the many divisions of nationality, community, society, species, and so on. Om Jnana Timirandasya Vyamanjana Shalakaya Chakshurumilangena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manovishnam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Paramayam Dharati Swaparanikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamanam Shri Guru Vaishnavasya Shri Rupam Sagajatam Saganaramanam Tam Sajivam Sarvetam Savadutam Paridanasaitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Saganarata Shri Vishakamitamsya He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Yokesha Gopikanta Radha Kanta Namaste Taptakanchana Gaurangi Devindavaneswari Vrishabhanusate Devi Pranamami Haripriye Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindhubhyascha Patitanam Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, I'll repeat the verse again. Divisions of generalization and specification, such as nationality and individuality, are the imaginations of persons who are not advanced in knowledge. So this chapter again is Narada and Angira instructs King Chittaketu. So just a little bit of overview, context for where we are in this current chapter. So King Chittaketu, this pastime is arising because Parikshit Maharaj has asked how Vritasura, the demon, was expounding such wonderful philosophy on the battlefield, being a demon, yet having such great knowledge in philosophy and being considered a devotee. And so Parikshit Maharaj was wondering how this is possible. And so Shukadev Goswami has been narrating now the pastime of King Chittaketu, who is the prior life of Vritasura, the demon. We'll understand in a coming chapter how King Chittaketu becomes Vritasura through the curse of Parvati. That's in the future. But up to this point, King Chittaketu is a wonderful king, a very powerful personality. He had many, many queens. But
But he did not have a son. And so he was in great lamentation. And he met Angira Rishi, who bestowed upon him the benediction that he would get a son. And through the blessings of the great Rishi, he finally had a son. But he warned that this son would come with both jubilation and lamentation. And that lamentation has occurred as the other queens who did not bear this child, became envious of the king's affection towards this child, and in some ways his disaffection towards the queens who were not able to produce a child. This is the nature of what happens. And the queens became very envious, and thus they poisoned the child, and the child died. And this created great grief in the heart of King Chitraketu. He became completely unglued, we say, completely lost all control of emotions, and became very disturbed. And so in this state, Narada Muni and Angira Rishi have come to recapture King Chitraketu and to guide him on the proper process. See, when we are in distress, if we are very blessed, someone will come and bestow upon us knowledge to guide us back to the path of strength, of peace, and happiness. And so this is what is happening. And so these first few verses in this chapter, Narada Muni and are just directly telling Chitraketu, without any sugarcoating, exactly how they should understand this. So this verse, again, is speaking about divisions and generalizations. And the point is that this consciousness occurs when one is not advanced in knowledge. So I thought, time permitting, we'll discuss three things today. The first is, how does one act? We'll do a comparison of actions when one is in knowledge, and how one acts when they are not in knowledge. So we can do a little compare and contrast. The second thing we can discuss today is how to be the beneficiary on the receiving end of knowledge, or even a little bit sometimes more painful for us, corrections. When somebody tries to correct us, how we can be the beneficiary of that. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. And then, given I am in the assembly of the world's, the universe's superpower of book distribution, we'll talk about how Srila Prabhupada's books are the source of this great knowledge, so that we also can be advanced in knowledge and thus not fall victim to these divisions and generalizations. So we'll try to discuss these three things in the time that we have allotted. So advanced knowledge. So what is knowledge? Knowledge is information that we obtain to then achieve some desired outcome. If I have knowledge about how to operate a cell phone, I can then communicate with somebody far away. That knowledge allows me to do that. If I have knowledge how to drive a car, it can allow me to reach a faraway distance in a short amount of time. So this knowledge is there to allow me to achieve some desired outcome. And so we know there is no shortage of knowledge out there in the world. But the question is, what knowledge will actually advance us, will actually bring us forward in our quest for ultimately finding this real perfection of life? So society, we know, they glorify so much knowledge. If you have a degree from IIT or Cambridge or Harvard, you are glorified as being very, very intelligent. And if you have a Bhakti Shastri degree, what are we considered? Oh, couldn't get into college, so you had to study Shastra. Like this. So society is completely bewildered as to what is real knowledge, what is real beneficial knowledge. And Srila Prabhupada was once touring MIT University, one of the top universities in the US. It's an engineering-based university. And they were showing him all the departments, the science department, the English department, the history department, and all these departments. And he was the least bit interested. He said, "Show me the soul department. Where are you educating people on the science of the soul?" Of course, that department is not present anywhere. So our material education, it brings us to this bodily consciousness. And it can simply get us to the point of learning how to eat nicely, sleep nicely, mate nicely, and defend nicely. The greatest and greatest of all material knowledge, it can only get us to that platform. And the end result of that knowledge we see in this verse. It is divisions of generalizations and specifications. I'll talk a little bit about what the consequence of that is in a moment. But Srila Prabhupada tells us what is real perfect knowledge. So if this is mundane knowledge, what is perfect knowledge? And in the 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, in the 3rd verse, Srila Prabhupada gives a very precise and wonderful definition. He says, perfect understanding of the constitution of 3 things. Of the body, of the soul, and the super soul, the controller of both. If we know the soul, the body, and the super soul, the constitution of each, that is real jnana, knowledge. It's not so complicated. We don't have to overcomplicate this understanding. But just understanding these 3 things actually gives us the perfect knowledge by which we can then bring about true perfection in life. Not just for us, but for everybody. And so that's the power of this. So these divisions, this nationalization, specification, it occurs, as Srila Prabhupada writes, when the individual has desired to act in forgetfulness of his original identity. So when we forget that we are spirit soul, that when we become overcome by our ahankara, this false ego, which leads us to believe that we are the doer, that we are the proprietor, then we begin to see everything on this bodily designation. Krishna explains this in the Bhagavad Gita as well, in chapter 18. He tells us, when one has knowledge that is conditioned by the 3 modes, whether it be in goodness, passion, and ignorance, how do they see? How do they understand things? So this knowledge in the mode of passion, it leads one to see individuals as different based on the bodily designation. Somebody from this country is different from that country. Whereas somebody who has knowledge in the mode of goodness, what do they see? The soul within everyone. So this is the distinction. So this verse is specifically speaking to this knowledge that's conditioned by the mode of passion and even ignorance, which is predominantly the knowledge that we see in the world around us. And what is the result of this? It is eternal conflict. How much blood has been shed in the history of time based on the color of our skin, based on the culture of our activities, based on our religious beliefs. On these designations, so much conflict has occurred. We see, even today, how much war there's taking place. We have 2, significant wars taking place today, all based on people claiming, this is my land and this is not your land. We are of this people and you are of that people. So these divisions, it leads to eternal conflict. And the only real solution for it is to understand our unity in the diversity of all living entities that exist. Not only in the human form of life. We know there are 8.4 million species of life. So many species of life. Why? To satisfy our unlimited material desires. Nature, through the ordain of the Supreme Lord, has fashioned so many varieties of bodies simply to satisfy our unlimited material desires. But regardless of which bodies we are in, we all know we are all united as spirit souls, eternally connected to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this simple knowledge, it leads to then no fighting. When Prahlad Maharaj was being instructed in his so-called Gurukul, he could not understand, what is this idea of friends and enemies? How anybody could be an enemy? We are all united as spirit souls. So the devotee doesn't see these distinctions in bodies. But one who is not advanced in this type of knowledge certainly finds this difficulty. And this, this possession of land, it is the source of so much battle, so much conflict. If we just simply understood, became knowledgeable about this Ishavasya principle. We read in Ishapanishad, this Ishavasyamidam sarvam yakincha jagat vigat tena tatena pujitaha margadaha kashasrinam. And we are not the proprietor. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, He is the source of everything, animate and inanimate. So what is our right to claim proprietorship over any piece of land? No, it is all the land of the Supreme Lord. But what is left for us? We have some quota. We have some facilities. Krishna, being our eternal loving Father, He has equipped this whole creation with sufficient resources for all of us to subsist and to live very peacefully and nicely. There is no need for us to quarrel over this is my land and this is not your land. But this is the nature today. But if we see in Srimad Bhagavatam, I'll make some geopolitical comments, not for the purpose of getting into any geopolitical discussions, but for the purpose of showing how Srimad Bhagavatam is the perfect recipe for solving all problems, including today's geopolitical situation. If you look at and we study all the great historical kings, they were described as rulers of the entire world. Shaptadvi. Even King Chittaketu, it's described that he was described as Sarvabhauma. He was the emperor of the whole world. So when there's one emperor over the whole world, no one faction can claim, hey, this is my land or this is your land. There's no division. We are all living under at least the emperor's rule. And of course, the great Rajarshis, the kings that were guided by these, the Brahmanas, understood how to rule this land, not with a sense of proprietorship, but as a sense of service, as a sense of seva, an obligation to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so this was the condition in the prior eras that we see throughout Srimad Bhagavatam. But what do we see today? If we study the world map, if we looked at a map today, and if I had a PowerPoint, and we looked at a map just a few hundred years ago, you would see one very distinct thing. That countries have become smaller and smaller and smaller. What's happening is we think through intelligence, hey, we have a group of people, let's give them some land. And we have another group of people, let's give them some land. And they'll be peaceful that way. But we know, due to the nature of greed, when I get something, am I satisfied? No, I want more and more and more. So no matter how much land we allocate to one group, they'll always want more. And so this division of the land into people, it has stopped forcing people to live cooperatively together. And thus we see this conflict. Okay, this is my land, you're infringing upon mine. I have some old maps drawn that showed I used to live here. And like this, we see the situation is getting worse and worse. If you look at these maps. So this degradation of this everybody living cooperatively, understanding who is the real proprietor, leads to all this conflict we see. But if we just apply the principles of Srimad Bhagavatam and understand how these prior leaders were able to rule with such great success, where there was no such conflict, there were no such terrorist groups. We see in 4th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Prithu Maharaj was such a perfect ruler that he would just twang his bow and the rogues and thieves would flee into the forest. There was no scope for any uprising. And everybody was living very, very successfully. So this is actually the solution. And Srimad Bhagavatam is the true advanced knowledge to find solutions to all these problems. This current wisdom of dividing up land. We see it here in India, what disaster that's created. We see it in Israel today with the division of the Israeli and Palestinian state. And you see it throughout Europe and all over Africa. It's everywhere. And this is the problem as we go away from the real source of knowledge, or Srimad Bhagavatam. You know, the situation of Chitraketu and his lamentation. His lamentation about losing his son, we simply understand by the one question that was posed to him. You are the father of this child. But who was this child's father 100 years ago? And who will be the father's child 100 years from now? Just simple understanding, we can realize these relationships we have, they're all temporary. Yes, I may be the father of this child. I'm a temporary custodian. But with knowledge, I know there is a spirit soul inside of this child. And that spirit soul is not eternally connected to me. That soul is eternally connected to the Supreme Personality of God. So what is my duty as a temporary custodian of this child? To reconnect this child to his eternal Father. And so when disturbances come, with this simple knowledge of body, soul, and super soul, we can solve all kinds of challenges. So these divisions, they are very detrimental to us. Now we may say, all these divisions, they're out in society. I am living in the temple. I am practicing spiritual life. I know I'm not this body. I'm spirit soul, so what's relevant to me? Actually, these tinges of division also enter into our bhakti. Just as we know that our practice of devotional service sometimes becomes tinged with the different modes of material nature. Those bhakti is transcendental to the modes due to our conditioning. We sometimes bring these impurities. How do these divisions exist in our spiritual life? I am pujari. I am book distributor. I am management. I am floor sweeper. I am cook. Like this. We start to own these designations. And these designations start to create conflict sometimes, even in the relationships of devotees. But we should always remember, what is our role in any service that we're performing? We are a tiny, infinitesimal spark. Tiny, tiny, tiny spark. Simply being allowed by Krishna and our leaders to perform some devotional service. Simply being allowed. If our service is not performed, trust me, Krishna is not going to be lessened in any way. He is fully self-satisfied. So we can be careful not to allow these designations even to enter into our own practice of devotional service. Yes, I may be given some service through temple management in this field. And if at some point I'm asked to do some other service, we should gladly take to that service as well, not become attached to one designation or another, but simply attached to how may I serve in a way that is pleasing to the Supreme Lord. That should be our singular focus. Not, I want to do this service and I don't want to do that service. Immediately when that consciousness manifests, we fall back into this bodily designation. That is the presence of this false ego. So we can try to abstain from that through this understanding of divisions, of generalization and specification. So maybe we can talk a little bit now about this topic of receiving feedback. So sometimes we see that even in Srimad Bhagavatam or our own experience, somebody who is headed down a very, very bad path very quickly is able to recover. And other times, someone is receiving great knowledge, great advice, great feedback, yet seemingly isn't able to benefit and change and uplift themselves. Why does that happen? We see in the case of Ravana, right? He was being informed over and over and over again by Vibhishan and others, even the facts unfolding before his eyes were telling him he should give up this and move on. But was he able to receive that knowledge? But if we compare that to the pastime of Mugari the hunter, Mugari the hunter, he was performing the most heinous of activities, half-killing animals. And when he was petitioned or questioned by Narada Muni, hey, why are you doing this? He said, this is the knowledge I have obtained from my father. This is the knowledge I have on how to maintain my family. So it was a fair disposition, actually. And then Narada Muni instructed him. And Mugari the hunter immediately detached from all this prior knowledge and very immediately took to the knowledge given to him by Narada Muni. Why? Because of his humility. He was extremely humble. Yes, he was performing atrocious activities, but he had the one great quality of humility. And thus that sage knowledge was able to penetrate the heart and thus transform into action. Knowledge only has value if it changes my action. If I have knowledge how to use this cell phone to connect with somebody far away like my mother, but I don't use that knowledge to then speak to my mother, what is the value of that knowledge? So the knowledge has value when it transforms into action. So Mugari very quickly changed his whole way of life because of this quality of humility. Ravan was not able to change even one tiny aspect. He had thousands of queens. He just had to give up one lady. But he could not. But with humility, Mugari was able to change everything. And we see the same thing in Chittaketu. He went from the ruler of the whole universe to a man who could not even walk steady steps, seeing his dead son lying in front of him. He became so weakened. Yet in just a few verses, he immediately realizes and was able to detach from the severe pain from the loss of his son. Why? Because of his humility. And we have some evidence here. When Angira Rishi first came to see Chittaketu, he congratulated him on his humility. In the coming verses, he's going to explain and respond to this great wisdom by saying, I am like a dog in a village, a pig. So fallen am I. What great ruler or king do we see speaking like that about themselves? But this is King Chittaketu. Even later, when he offends Parvati Devi and receives a curse, he's going to show great humility by tolerating this. So with a humble heart, that we can actually receive this knowledge, this correction, this advice, and uplift us from whatever situation we are in. So our opportunity in practicing spiritual life as a sadhaka, as a aspiring perfection in devotional service, is to embrace correction and feedback. And when we say embrace correction and feedback, it is not like this. We go out and ask 10 devotees, Prabhuji, how am I doing? And the 5 that say are really good, oh, they are very learned. They are pure devotees. And the 5 who give us some corrections, oh, they must be at Maya. No, not like that. Not like that. We should, seek out those who have faith, who have our interest at heart, who have our purification at heart. And should ask and inquire, how can I improve my devotional service? We should embrace this feedback. And sometimes that feedback stings a little bit. It hurts. Just like when a doctor gives an injection. That injection has a little bit of pain. But that pain is in order to receive the medicine. Similarly, that pain that we might feel, it is there but it is for our benefit. And what is that pain? What is that pain? That is the pride in the heart. If we want to know the pride in our heart, the next time somebody gives us some corrective feedback, assess our emotion. When there is some pain, some discomfort, that is pride in the heart. And what we can try to do? We can try to lessen and lessen and lessen that. Ultimately, till it is completely gone. That is our opportunity. And if we do, then we will be assured to make great success in spiritual life. You know, two of the most dangerous words in devotional service. I know. Let us try to eliminate those words from our vernacular. Even if you do know, the reason is, as soon as I say I know, we block out all information that is coming to us. We completely prevent it from entering into our heart. So just stop this consciousness of I know. Take that out. We can take this information and have the transformations for wherever we are to the state of perfection, like Mugari, like Chittakyuta will, and many others in our study of Srimad Bhagavatam. So I'd like to conclude with just a short discussion on the power of Srila Prabhupada's books. Those been asked to speak about the power of books. As I said, I'm in the epicenter of the most glorious place for book distribution. All of you devotees are the inspiration to all of us, all over the world, for how to do book distribution. We're very, very grateful to all of you. I am the extreme beneficiary of book distribution. I just learned of this recently, so I wanted to share with you in just 2 minutes' time. So I didn't understand Prabhuji's introduction, probably for a good reason, but I heard him mention my father's name. So my father and mother are practicing devotees. But that was not always the case. My father grew up in a very pious household. My grandfather was an extremely pious man, but he was also very specifically non-spiritual. He had lots of skepticism about being, cheated and misled. And so he was a very prominent lawyer, a very charitable man, would serve very wonderfully, very piously, but was stoutly unreligious. And so that obviously bled into my father. My father came to the U.S. in 1967 to study and get his master's. And so he was a pious gentleman as well, but stoutly non-religious and was very skeptical. My mother, on the other hand, was, like a lot of us, ritualistic and sentimental in her spirituality, no real philosophical foundation. And so when my elder brother was born in 1971, my mother said we have to take him to the temple. So my father said, okay, fine. And so they brought my elder brother, just a few days old, to the temple. They put him in front, and the only temple, of course, was the ISKCON temple in Detroit. It wasn't at the Fisher Mansion at that time. And so my father, again being a pious person, gave some donation, and they gave him a Bhagavad Gita. It gets better. So he got this Bhagavad Gita, and he thought, all right, and he put it in the shelf. And this chair, and he was just telling me this a few days ago in Vrindavan. I didn't know this story. So in the chair he would sit, he would always see that Bhagavad Gita. And so from time to time he would go and grab it, he would read Dharma Shete, Prabhu Shete, close it. He couldn't understand anything. He was frustrated. He was an engineer, he was smart, he was thinking, I should be able to read and understand. And so he kept approaching this Bhagavad Gita, but he couldn't understand anything. And he would get stuck up with the very first word, transcendental. What is transcendental? He couldn't understand. And so he was just thinking, how I can understand this. And that desire started to manifest. 1971, I said he received the book. 1983, 84, somebody knocked on his door. It was a Gujarati gentleman and said, I see you're a Patel, and I would like to give you this Bhagavad Gita. And he looked, and it was a Gujarati Bhagavad Gita. And he was always wanting to know. And the gentleman said, I am conducting these classes, teaching Bhagavad Gita. And my father said, I've been desiring to try to know this, and now, finally, this is happening. Even after this, he was not able to attend 6 or 7 sessions because some conflict. Then there was a Gornitai Didi installation, and he told my mother, remember, the one who was not married, he said, we are going to this program no matter what. And by the mercy of Gauranga Mahaprabhu, and by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada's books, that started his journey. That brought him to Sri Vrindavan Dham. He's been serving for the last 20 years. And I always tell him he's got a 50% success rate. His first son is a very nice devotee, doing very, very well. I still pray he'll bless me that someday I'll also purify and become a devotee. But it's a very wonderful example of how these books are truly ticking time bombs. It may take years, in his case, 12, 13 years before he was able to actually start understanding this Bhagavad Gita. So please continue distributing these books, and I beg your blessing so that I can distribute at least 1 or 2 books, and hopefully these ticking time bombs will explode at some point, and people will become advanced in knowledge. Stop this generalization, this specification, and come to a higher platform where we can achieve perfection in life, serving Sri Sri Radha Parthasarthi Dharma. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada. Any corrections, questions, comments? I think we have a few minutes left before we get to the main event, which is His Holiness Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj's program, which I was unaware of this.
So Krishna. Okay.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Vaishnav Pranam.
Thanks.
Prabhuji, my question was, I have 2 questions. First is, you said we have to eliminate this I know consciousness. But when we have something in our consciousness for a very long time, so eliminating it needs some kind of strategy. So can you tell about the strategy, how to remove this I know kind of consciousness?
Yes. So this I know consciousness, it is born again out of our false ego and ultimately pride. Right? And so how to eliminate that? There's only one cleansing agent. Cheto Darpana Marjana, chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. But very purposeful and intentive chanting. So, we should chant with great intention. And if this is one of our goals, and I want to become free of this, then we can make our chanting a prayer to the Supreme Lord to please purify me of this anartha, so that I can take to this instruction I'm getting from all around me and become a better servant of you. So we have this consciousness and take that into our chanting. That is one way we can try to bring about this promotion. His Holiness Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj ki, Srila Prabhupada ki.